Petr Yan just called out Deiveson Figueiredo. That is a very peculiar call out. So here's the way this story went, guys. Petr Yan is claiming that nobody will fight him, which not for nothing I fully believe because I can't imagine who would want to fight him. That's a very hard spot to be in. Petr Yan was the champion of the world, but I feel he's done a great job of showing us all, if he's not the absolute best, he's the next best thing. Right? Like on any given day, he's the world champion, but there's not a whole lot of days where you could imagine him sliding down as far as 3. He's awesome. With a whole bunch of heart. And now he's angry. How would you like to take on a world champion who, by the way, is now upset? It's a really tough spot to be in. So when he says that nobody wants to fight, I believe that. Not to mention, think of how hard of a night that is going to be. And I don't know that you're guaranteed a #1 contendership fight. And that's the kind of guy that if you're going to fight, there's got to be something on it. There used to be a world championship. Now there's not. We got to have #1 contender. We got to have this established or promised or call somebody else. Now, I understand that once somebody's phones get rang, you can match them up. You can make these kinds of things happen. But Jan was just speaking to the fact that when he comes to the public and to social media, when he goes and calls a guy out, he's not getting anybody to say yes. I believe him. That would be a really unpleasant evening at the office. Can we all at least agree on that? Now, he calls out Figueiredo. Wow. How come? Why? Is Petr Yan possibly talking about cutting down to 125 pounds? I don't think so. I don't think that he could make that weight class. I've never heard him speak about that. But he knows that champion of the world isn't going to leave the division and come up and fight him just because, right? Which would lead you to believe he is talking about dropping down a weight class. The other side of that coin is Figueiredo has said that he's very unhappy right now. He's always had a hard time making weight. He's missed weight 2 separate times just off the top of my head. He's talked about becoming a 135-pounder. If the champ is going to move up a weight class, there's always this make-believe, right? It's done by you, the audience, but the audience always just believes that he's moving right into a world title fight. That's not a rule. As a matter of fact, the false notion that a sitting champion moving up has to move into a world title fight is what has stopped the opportunity to so many guys, because the promoter will look at it and go, yeah, I'm not putting him against this guy. That fight doesn't work. Well, if you word it a little bit differently, you say, look, he's going to move up and he's going to take on so-and-so, it is very different. I mean, I think we proved this earlier in the week. We talked about Volkanovski moving up to 155, and we admit Volkanovski versus Oliveira, very interesting match, but Volkanovski is a contender. Volkanovski versus Michael Chandler, by example. Volkanovski versus Justin Gaethje is far more interesting than champ versus champ at that particular weight class. So what was Jan trying to achieve? Is Jan telling us, with the right motivation and the acceptance by the champion, that he will move down to 125 pounds? Maybe. He didn't specify. Maybe. Anybody in the history of ever that's called out a sitting champion, of course, means for your belt at your weight class. Nobody has ever called out a sitting champion to come and fight you somewhere else for no belt. But that doesn't mean that's not exactly what just happened here. Jan might have followed that Figueiredo was thinking about leaving the weight class. Jan might have done the math to know Figueiredo's going to move right into a meaningful shot, but possibly not a world title fight. And maybe Jan wanted to be the one to agree. Look, I got to tell you, that's a great match. That's a really great match. I don't know how much I love the idea of Jan at 125. I'm trying to picture that. It's very hard for me to do. Jan right now looks like his body was carved out of stone, and that's at 135. I don't know that he can get smaller. However, the right motivation, and he had 10 pounds, maybe a guy could. I don't know that that's even the conversation that we're having right now. It seemed to me that 125 pounds is pretty booked up. You got Kaikar France, you got Brandon Moreno. They're going to go out and fight for this interim belt, which an interim belt does mean one thing. It absolutely solidifies the fact that you're the #1 contender. Which brings me back to the fact that I don't think that Jan is offering to go down to 125. I think he just called out Figueiredo. Puts the champ in a very interesting position. Figueiredo is flirting with and threatening the idea that he's going to move to 135, but he has no opponent. He's got no heat. He's got nobody coming for him. Very easy to say you're going to move into a division, even when you have absolutely no plans to. And then you start calling out all these really tough guys who don't respond to you. They're booked up, they're tied, they're fighting somebody else, you're too small. There's a number of reasons they don't come back at you. That's not what happened. Yan has now said, you want to come to 135, here I am. And he's got me listening. I don't know that Figueiredo wants to go to 135, but he is saying that he's unhappy at 125. He has missed weight not once but twice. Maybe he just found the right opponent. It was an interesting call out. It could be a sign of the thing in the future. I don't hate the idea of top guys calling out top guys, even when they're in different divisions. I don't hate that. I like the parity. I like the matchups. I wish we had a little bit more floating. I know that it's not the way that I want it. I know that it's unlikely. But I thought it was a good move by Yan. And I think Figueiredo's going to respond. Only thing I don't know is if Figueiredo is going to accept.